talked about blossom. That's our theme today, blossom. So the opposite of blossom is wither, and that sounds negative. So it's fall, and we're starting to have our perennials go dormant. Most people say, if it's brown, cut it down. That's wrong. That's rude. There's still seeds in here. But nature is more than a single concept. It's complex ecosystems. And so what we want to gain out of all of this today is, my hope is that each of you take parallels from this talk and apply them to your personal lives and compare that to the lives of plants. So I promise science, we're going to start there. So it's not as simple as a plant blooms, there becomes a seed, there becomes another plant. There are other factors involved. There are environmental factors that go into the first stage of blossoming. And so that's, temperature, water, nutrients. And so all of these align, and the bloom is created on that plant. And so then, okay, now you have the bloom, but we need to get to a seed because the seed is the next plant. And so how does that happen? It needs extra help. And pollinators are the answer for that help. Pollinators come in many forms, and wind being one, but we mostly think of insects as the powerhouse. But bats are also another pollinator that sometimes we don't think about. Now, seeds, so yes, you have a seed, but not all are viable. And so that can be a concern for the next generation of plants. And so some seeds, to become viable and germinate, they need further help. So they may need things like fire to run across the seed to germinate. There may need to be cold stratification. That means that seed sits in cold temperatures for a prolonged period of time. Or scarification, like scratching of that seed coat in order to make it germinate. So flower, it's... Yeah. Sure. Okay,
we're switching mics. Sorry, guys.
We're swapping mics.
Technical difficulty. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry for
that. No worries. So to keep this at baseline, in order for a seed to happen, there needs to be some things that happen in the plant, and that's that pollination process. So the male part of the flower, so the stamen has an anther in it, and the anther has the pollen on it, and then that pollen needs to touch the female part of the plant, which is the pistil, and then the stigma is part of the pistil, and the stigma has this sticky substance on it, and the pollen sticks to it, and voila, we have a seed. So how do plants attract their pollinators? That can be a little tricky. And over time, plants have adapted characteristics within themselves to attract these pollinators. And some are big, showy petals. Now, insects and people love big, showy petals. Magnolia is a great example of big, showy petals. Magnolia is interesting because it's a plant that came on the scene and predates butterflies and moths. So how the heck does it get pollinated? Beetles. So to this day, you'll still find some beetles rummaging around in magnolias. Another characteristic that is amazingly cool are nectar guides. Think of these as runways for insects to come and get their pollen on them. And catalpa, so I'm going to use the pointer here. So that's magnolia. This is catalpa. And so these are the nectar guides right here of catalpa. And so this is where the pollen's held. And so the insect just says, yeah, sure, I know where to go now. Some other showy examples are the chalice vine. So this is showy petals, chalice vine, the anemone, the hibiscus. So this plant has some showy flowers. This is the carrion plant. But the showy characteristics of its petals are not really its characteristic to pollination. Olfactory or smell is its adaptive quality. So it smells like meat, and that's meat that's been sitting out on your counter for 3 to 4 days. It has a really not great smell. So flies come and think they're about to get a stinky meat meal, and they're tricked. So they end up pollinating because they're searching for this rotten meat, don't find it, pollinate the flower, and then they don't get any lunch out of it. Deception. I bet we're all resonating with this one. So deception, sundew, which is a carnivorous plant. We think of Venus flytrap and pitcher plants as carnivorous plants, but sundews are also, and so this is sundew right here. So what it does have a flower, but it takes insects that come to pollinate that. It has these little sticky substances all over the leaf. The insect hits that sticky substance, gets stuck. The leaf wraps it up and digests it in the plant. And then, it gets pollinated and it gets a free meal. So it's a very selfish plant. And then I want to talk about mimicry. So these two plants right here, so this is the sundew, and this is the rock moss spirea. So they don't grow in the same habitat, but sometimes plants do grow in the same habitat that have similar structures. And so this is just one that, you may walk by plants and say, wow, that kind of looks similar. And so why would that be? It's because it's that attracting value that it sends up its flower and or flower mimic to attract those pollinators. Man, passion flower. This is one of my favorites. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's got it's showing out. It's got big petals. It's got that big nectar guide in the center. It holds its pollen on its anthers right under here. So the insect comes and rummages around for nectar down in here, and the whole time is rubbing that pollen. And then as it flies away, it'll go to the next one and then cross-pollinate with the female portion. That's the pistil right there. So really awesome. Trout lily is a spring ephemeral. This is a plant that has a short bloom window. Some plants bloom months and months and months in your yard. Some have very short windows. Spring ephemerals come on early spring, and they disappear by summer. So they like to put their pollen, their adventitious behavior is to put their pollen out into the world. So wind is one way to pollinate, but also this helps insects come and do a flyby, if you will, and get some pollen. We have St. John's wort right here. This is another plant that is doing a couple of things. Yes, it holds its pollen out, but it also has prolific blooms on the plant. So to produce bloom, you're using a lot of energy. And so, but this plant is saying, hey, I can expend this energy because I have a better chance to produce more viable seed if I have more blooms. So I want to talk about water lily first. And I want to talk about it in terms, I touched on the term ecosystem earlier. And so these are things that are bigger than just one plant, bigger than just one species. These are habitats. And so I like to think about water lily in terms of if I was an amphibian, like a frog. And so if I was a frog and I saw water lilies in the pond, insects are constantly around these water lilies. Now, the water lily needs to get pollinated, but as an insect, I now have a buffet. So flowers are more important than just reproducing themselves. They actually provide habitat for many other species. One other characteristic is tubular flowers. So there are insects that have proboscis, which is like a tongue, and we'll look at that in a minute. And then also hummingbirds, they have a very pointed beak. So how do they get down into that flower? So they've worked with flowers that are tubular. So the zebra plant right here and the Henry Eiler's Rudbeckia are two great examples of tubular shaped flowers. And so when you see those, out in the world and in landscapes, you can go, man, I bet a hummingbird would be around here. And right now, hummingbirds are starting to migrate south, so you can probably catch a couple in the area. So let's just watch a bee with a nectar guide. I'll move back so everybody can see. So you see that bee is just moving in, gets that pollen on the back of itself, and then moves to the next flower and cross-pollinates. And so as we're sharing, so each flower has its own, genetic code, each plant has its own genetic code. So as that bee goes from one catalpa to another catalpa down the street, it's sharing genetic information and diversifying the next generation of seed to make it stronger and more adapted to the environment. Plants also protect themselves because the goal is reproduction. At the end of the day, the goal for a plant is reproduction. So they can create these spines. This is lion's paw. This is a plant that's native to Africa, but it creates these spines so herbivores will stay away from it so that it can totally blossom in all of its splendor. The Himalayan blue poppy, this is a plant that grows in the Himalayas but also can grow in Alaska. And it has, many plants do this, magnolia is another one, but it has hairs on the bud of the plant. And so what this does is it allows water to sit on top of those hairs, and as temperatures at night dip down to freeze, the water does not freeze on the bud, it's held above it so it doesn't have a freeze-thaw effect and crack that bud. Nature's really fascinating. And so here we have Solomon seal and then we have coneflower. And so these two plants couldn't look more different, but they have strategies for survival, for future generations. So Solomon seal likes to hold its flowers under its canopy, and Solomon seal grows in wooded areas. So it has lots of competition around it, but seed from a plant needs to make contact with soil in order to germinate. So this is an extra insurance. It's already held under the leaf surface. This is an extra insurance that it'll make it to that forest floor. Whereas coneflower over here, it has a seed head that's held up high on a really sturdy stalk. It's held taller than above many perennials. And so this is a great perch for birds to come and eat that seed and then carry it away and deposit it elsewhere. Trillium is one of my favorite. This is another spring ephemeral. If you've ever done a woodland walk, you'll see this plant. Red Trillium specific has, they're pollinated by flies, and so we already talked about how that process works. It doesn't stink near as much as the carrion plant, so it's palatable. But the seed is interesting. The seed has this fatty coating over it, and ants love it. So once it sets seed, you'll see ants come like for a feast, and they'll take that seed back to their colony. They'll eat that fatty deposit for themselves. They'll leave the seed already underground, and then hopefully a new trillium patch will sprout up from that. Wetland plants are something that I wasn't into at the start of my career, but I've gotten into heavily over the last 5 years. And white blooming turtlehead is one of these plants. It's very interesting how the petals do. It almost looks like a fish's mouth. And so the insect really has to work hard to get in there. And so most times you have to have a big-bodied insect like a bee in order to get into some of these plants. And so you can see on this bee, she has been working hard all day. Look at all of that pollen already on the back of the leg. And so let's just watch this bee in action. No care for whatever is around it. Its sole focus is to get pollen. So it takes its mouth parts, takes the two petals of the flower, separates them, and just dives in. It's fascinating. That's your only job for the day. You just go collect pollen. So we think of a lot of times if you've heard the term host specific. So it's like an insect that needs a plant or a plant that only supports a certain insect, and we think of monarchs. Monarch butterflies and milkweed is very synonymous. So monarchs, so this is a monarch, and then this is a common milkweed plant. But why is the monarch not on the common milkweed plant? Because monarchs only need that milkweed plant during the caterpillar stage, so the egg and caterpillar. The caterpillars eat the leaves, and then in the adult stage, they're ready to take flight and migrate down south. So when they migrate down south, they need nectar. They need that energy. And one way to get that energy is to visit lots of native plants that have pollen. So this is a blazing star. And so butterfly adults become generalists, and they'll just like, man, I'm taking pollen from wherever I can get it. I mean, nectar from wherever I can get it because I need energy. Whereas the flower of the milkweed is also, it's not host specific, it's general. It has general nectar for anyone to come visit and get a little shot. And so this is the great spangled fritillary that's coming to visit this milkweed. I talked about proboscis earlier, and it's a funny word. I like this word ever since I heard it. And it's, I always think of it's like a go-go gadget tongue. And so this is a hummingbird moth. They are so cool. It's not a butterfly, it's a moth, but it's in the same order. They're like cousins to the butterfly. So this is the proboscis extended. And if that proboscis curled back up, it would curl up in just a perfect little curly Q circle. Just stunningly gorgeous. If you ever just sit and wait and be patient, guaranteed you'll see an insect with a proboscis. There are many butterflies, moths, even bees and some flies have proboscis. So we created a yarden in our yarden. So a yarden, for those that may not know, is just we removed turf and we planted native plants that feed us and insects. And one of the things that we wanted to do the first year that we could harvest a crop, we harvested chokecherry, service berries, and blackberries. And so we put all those together and we made the itty bittiest small tart ever. It was awesome. And so the second year I was like, okay, we'll have a more bountiful harvest, but I also want to give thanks to the insects that pollinated this. So I spent some time outside just patiently watching and documenting insects. And if that doesn't show you that I'm a true nerd, I'm not sure what would. But the fly came, and you can almost see this little fly. This is chokecherry. It was like a ton of flies that day, and so I documented them all. We all think of flies as they're kind of gross. My mom used to tell me that every time a fly lands, it throws up. And so I was like, okay, that's disgusting. So as I'm watching this, I'm thinking of what my mom used to tell me, and but I remember we made this tart, and so because of this fly's pollination, my family could successfully have a really nice dessert, and it forever changed the way that I viewed the value of a fly. We talked earlier about the host-plant relationship to monarchs. There's another host-plant relationship that I want to touch on. Wetlands in the state of Kentucky are being depleted due to development and overdevelopment. So one way to start to bring plants that have been depleted back is to add them into landscapes. And so one of them is that white blooming turtlehead. That's the bee that we watch kind of work that plant. It's host to the Baltimore checker spot. So this is a butterfly that hasn't been seen in any large numbers around Kentucky in quite some time. These plants and this plant and this butterfly used to be pretty readily available. And so when we look at ways that we can bring habitat back, those host plant connections are very important. This one was just monarchs feeding on a monarch caterpillars on a common milkweed. So we talked about blossom. That's our theme today, blossom. So the opposite of blossom is wither, and That sounds negative. It's fall, and we're starting to have our perennials go dormant. Most people say, if it's brown, cut it down. That's wrong. That's rude. There's still seeds in here. There's totally still seeds. Birds need these. Small mammals need these. Some of the stems of native grasses and perennials are hollow, and they overwinter native bees. Bees will lay their next generation in those stems. The cover that the leaf litter provides, it also hosts insects that overwinter in the ground. Why is it that we think this is bad? I'm here to tell you, brown's beautiful in every form. Society has demonized this color in many ways, and it takes us to learn and understand and accept and advocate for the color brown. So this is not linear. We've talked about so many concepts today. They only gave me a short amount of time, and we just touched the surface on these concepts. So this Jack in the Pulpit, a lot of times we see the flower. We may see a little bit of the pollination process, maybe, and we see the fruit. All the other factors that were involved to make this happen, a lot of times we don't see. We don't see the struggle. We don't see the resources. We don't see the failure. We don't see some of the fun that happens in this process. And that missing all of the elements that come together to make something whole, we aren't getting the whole picture of nature. And I think we do that a lot of times with ourselves as humans as well. So we've got some struggles as a society, and we have to figure some things out. We're running into issues with food scarcity in many parts of the world. Most of our food is pollinated by insects. Overuse of pesticides are depleting these insects. Overuse of development and land is making it harder and harder to grow food. Monarchs are now on the threatened list of species. And as they start to migrate back and forth, as we continue to develop that land, it makes it harder for them to stop off to get those nectar resources, to continue their journey. Saguaro cactus is endemic to one part of southern Arizona and a little bit of Mexico. Saguaro cactus doesn't know that there's a border. And so when you disjunct habitat, when you draw a line and say, okay, I'm going to build this impenetrable border, you're cutting off resources from one or the other. This is a thank you. This is a keystone species in that region of the world. This is very similar to our oak tree here. So think about it, if we just chopped up, and we are chopping it up, all the land to deplete a keystone species. Great Smoky Mountains, I don't have to tell you what's happening with the park system. We're just going to leave it there. So we could bury our heads in the sand and we could say that's someone else's problem. There's probably someone smarter than me that'll figure it out. But I don't believe that. I think we're all highly capable humans of thinking logically to solve problems. So that we can balance construction with natural habitat. It's possible if we think about it. We have to change the way we build. We have to. So we can regenerate land. So land that is poor, it doesn't mean it's worthless. It just means you have to work a little harder to make it be something again. When you're building, build different. So this is a spillway out at Bernheim. Bernheim was asked to say, hey, I need you to build a secondary spillway. Bernheim said, cool, I don't want turf to be on this. I want pollinators. So state of Kentucky agreed. And so now it supports 3 acres of pollinator habitat. Green roofs are possible. We are right next to this green roof. Did y'all know American Life building right down here, 2 blocks down, has a green roof on top of it? How gorgeous is this? Listen, nature doesn't need us. We need nature. And until we can wrap our minds around the fact that we are not superior to it, we will continue to fail in the areas of nature. So be kind to yourselves and the plants. Thank you.